Welcome back, Evan. I'm so happy to have you here.
Happy to be here. Nice as always.
So the question that I want to ask you that I think is really needs to be answered is what does it mean when we say fear of visibility? Because I know that gets used a lot. It's a big buzzword. So tell me what you think that really means.
Yeah, I think it's very personal. So I don't know that I could give an objective meaning of it, but I think it's something that is consistently worked on by people who are, I mean, not only performers, right? But in our world, a lot of people who are becoming coaches or wanting to put themselves out there more, whether that's YouTube, whether that's social, to have your voice, your work, your EFT tapping, your meditations, your blogs, right? The fear that comes up around people being able to see something that's actually you, your creation, right? So I think there's visibility, not just as you, maybe if it was anonymous, people might be less fearful around it, right? But I think in our world, fear of visibility is an umbrella term for what comes up for me or what blocks me from putting my own material out there that's really my voice or trying to be my voice, saying, hey, this is what I think about emotional work. This is how I can help you. This is how I do tapping. And I think why I say it's an umbrella term is because it's really not specific enough, in my experience, to be enough to just work broadly on the fear of visibility and then expect that you're just going to kind of clear that. Like it's this thing. I have this thing, fear of visibility. And once I release that, I'm just going to be, hey, everyone, hey, hello, world, here I am. Right. So the umbrella term speaks to, I think, what needs to be a lot more personal and specific. What specifically comes up for you for this one specific thing you're doing? Like your first, even having a website, your first Facebook post, because that could be different. You could have different comfort or discomfort levels with one versus the other.
Right. Yes, totally. I mean, I think we have to get personal. We have to, because fear of visibility is a very vague term, right? Like you said. But like, what does it look like? Because people are, watching this video, they want to know, okay, fear of visibility. Like they probably don't even know they have fear of visibility. So what does it actually look like? Or how does it show up? And absolutely, I've seen it show up where people have a fear of being seen in one space, but not another, or depending on who's there, like as far as, whether they're speaking to a group of colleagues versus maybe potential clients and various different arenas they could be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I guess the way it shows up for most people that's really relevant to them is they're simply not doing things to get themselves quote unquote out there, but they have the ideas. Sometimes pretty concrete, sometimes good concrete ideas. Oh, I could do this. I have an idea for a website. I have a name. I have some videos I could talk about. Sometimes even for a really clear audience. Like, oh, I know who I would be talking to. I got the perfect blog for like moms who are stressed out with their kids, and I could do this tapping and all this stuff, but something keeps blocking it, right? So often shows up as procrastination, often shows up as like I don't ever seem to have enough time, life seems to be getting in the way, or just like I'm just not doing it. I've heard that plenty of times. Like I had all day yesterday and I just didn't do it. And but what's always interesting is there is a sincere desire. You can feel a sincere desire to do that thing. Like you really care about what it is. It's an actual interest. It's an actual passion. And I often hear, yeah, I've done a lot of tapping or meditating or releasing on this fear of visibility, fear of being seen. And that's why I often say it's not specific enough, but to look at how it shows up for you is a bigger clue. So I guess the mistake, that's not bad. It's not going to hurt you. It probably helps a little bit, but it's like you take that really specific thing you're going through. Like, yeah, I had all day on Saturday, and I just didn't do it, even though I had enough energy. I know I'm inspired. I know I want to get this thing off the ground. And I went to, or perhaps I went to sit down to do it, and then I was just like, spent 2 hours thinking about the font like something that you know doesn't matter, but like something in you is finding a way to distract you. The what I would encourage not doing is going, oh, I need to go like watch another, Tap with Brad, Fear of Invisibility, which is great, but you've probably already done it 50 times, right? We want to get a lot more specific and dialed in because you've got that memory, you've got that moment of like, wait, let me go back into that chair on Saturday or when I was looking at the clock and I was like, I got an hour. I could totally sit down and work on this. And what are the reasons that came up, which are usually smoke screens, as you know. And let's dig into that a little bit. Let's find out what's actually going on there.
Yeah, I love that example. Is it that, you've got the time and, I can totally relate
Oh
and
yeah.
even sit down and then you start getting distracted by other things, and or there's just a million reasons why and you don't finish. And then you're like, oh, I didn't have time, you know.
Mhm.
Or even
Absolutely.
like I also can, and for me personally, I think there's levels of fear of visibility because, I've been posting and showing up on social media and, emailing my email list and all those things for years and years and years. But I think that I got really comfortable in a certain role, which is a role of like being a healer and a helper, like someone who helps others heal, which is an archetype. And then I found it a little uncomfortable when I started feeling like I wanted to step out and really speak my truth as far as like moving out of the role of just being a healer or helper into like a leadership position and being the CEO of my own business. And I felt like I was pretty uncomfortable um, talking about like coming from that perspective instead of just being a helper. And there
Oh yeah.
was some fear of that level of visibility for me.
That's very relatable for me. My entire framework as a human really was supportive role, right? I mean, I'm a bass player. That's my primary profession. It was for years. I'm not the lead singer. And my relationship in this world of emotional work, I was behind the scenes with different people, right? I maybe help them with some of their technology stuff in the beginning. Then maybe I would be a more experienced student to where I'm like assisting or an assistant at a workshop, and then maybe a little co-teaching, but certainly not the idea that I'm going to be, you know, come visit me, come to my workshop, right? So that was not comfortable for me at all. And I'm not claiming that like I'm super incredibly comfortable with that, but it's compared to what I was, where that like that's not even who I am, where it's more of an active, I don't do that. That's not what I am. And those are always interesting when you find those. It's like, no, 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 I do this, not that. I'm supportive. I'm not the headliner. It's like, well, does that mean I can't be? Or is that something I've taken on? And so I can very much relate to being able to kind of shine as the supportive role and having a lot of ideas for other people, which as an aside can also be an interesting, I don't know if it's ego in the negative sense, but it's always much easier to look at someone else and go, why aren't they doing that? Why don't they just do this workshop? They already have this YouTube channel. But then when it comes to your own work, it's like I don't even know what to do. I'm just swimming in this sea of endless options. I very much relate.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's important just for everyone that's watching this to know that it is about what we're like the roles we're comfortable in because I've seen that a lot where people are uncomfortable because they might be showing up in a way that could make other people uncomfortable because their role is different. Like for instance, people who are starting a coaching business and they're going to start posting on their social media about their business, but they haven't before because they haven't had a business and maybe they've got friends or family members that are, watching their posts and
Hmm.
they feel really triggered around, oh my God, what are they going to think about this thing that I'm talking about? Are they going to think that I'm crazy or this is too woo-woo or what, that's definitely about your role changing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and it's interesting what that's making me think about, even for my own way of approaching how I've gone about being a little more public with the work I do in emotional work and facilitating. Because it was very secret sort of side thing I did on the side. And Evan Greger is a musician, and that's still kind of, but they've integrated more now. But for my own clarity and my own comfort level and organization, there are different things with that. So the YouTube channel is not Evan Greger. The Evan Greger YouTube channel, which I don't really do much on at all, is jazz bass player, right? Or New York City bass player. And then inner work with Evan is the term I always use for when I'm going to be on someone else's. I mean, if I have a say in it, I'll just default to that. That's my YouTube name. So there's some separation in my mind. And it's not always necessarily fear-based. I mean, in my case, there was a certain discomfort, especially in the beginning, of like, oh, I don't want anyone to see that I do this other thing. I don't know why. I just thought musicians would find it weird and it would affect me negatively in some way. Hasn't seemed to have been the case. People are actually pretty interested in it. But so practically, it's not to say that you need to overcome everything. You just need to work within the parameters. Like if you're not comfortable calling yourself fill in the blank, well, let's not wait maybe 3 years for you to get comfortable. Call yourself something else. Figure it out how it needs to be for you. Like maybe you don't like calling yourself a business coach, or maybe you don't like saying EFT tapping practitioner. You don't have to call yourself that, even if that's your main tool. That's just the tool. So you get to decide what fits in your comfort level. And that's, I think, super important. It's one of my favorite things to talk about because, again, fear, when I will be over my fear of visibility, it's like, no, that's way too abstract. I really needed to think through deliberately what needs to be in place, what words am I okay using and describing myself as, what's the impression I'm creating? Not totally because, oh, I just care too much what people think about me. It's like, no, I care about not misrepresenting what I do or creating an image that's like, work with Evan and you'll have all the money and success you ever. I can't promise you that. And so it's important to me to have the frameworks in place. Like, how do I describe what I do? How do I think about it so that I'm, whether it's limited or not, which it might be, right? I might be limiting myself because I could potentially attract a bigger audience if I used certain language or certain words. But if I'm not comfortable with it, I'm not going to do it. And then I'm going to end up with zero clients, zero customers, zero, like depending on your business, clients, customers, leads, referrals. If you aren't comfortable with what you are describing yourself as, then it doesn't matter whether it's the perfect one or not. It's what you can embrace and be okay with. And then it can expand. Because I've noticed for me, certain things I was very uncomfortable with, starting to become more comfortable. Maybe I've actually worked with more people with X, Y, or Z situation. And now I feel more confident saying, yes, I could help you if you're dealing with this because I've done it 5 times now. So all these kinds of things I think play a factor.
We have the right to define ourselves. I think that's what I'm hearing is like you get to define yourself in a way that's authentic and you're comfortable with. And if you think you have to go out there and just like you said, put yourself out there like everybody else is, just because you have this one thing in common, whether it's a modality or a technique or something like that. You don't have to represent yourself like other people do, but you get to define yourself in a way that you can be comfortable with and that you can show up authentically.
Yeah, and that may be your actual antidote to the fear of visibility. Not necessarily trying to attack that in a broad emotional level. I got to release that fear. No, there might be more practical groundwork in place that once you can say, yeah, inner work with Evan on YouTube uses EFT, but is about emotional processing to help release stress, bring more clarity, I'm comfortable with those terms. If I'm just like, I don't know, then I might be mislabeling that sort of as a fear of visibility when really there's a lack of clarity.
Yes, absolutely. I want to actually mention this little story because I think it can speak to a lot of people, is that some people have a fear of visibility in that they're afraid if they show up, nobody will say anything. Like no one's going to notice or respond or engage. That's like a nuance, right? And I was thinking about how my business coach, the first business coach I ever worked with, Sinai Floyd, who we're now like fabulous business besties, she was she was showing up on Facebook as a coach. And I think that I followed her for it was at least over 2 years without commenting, without, really, maybe a couple likes here or there, but like literally followed her. And then one day I just was ready and I had her in my mind because I've been following her for so long. I went to her website and I booked a call with her, but she didn't know I existed. But she was showing up and she was, talking and riffing and like she was just doing what she was doing and I connected with her. But the truth is if she hadn't just shown up, even though maybe people aren't necessarily engaging or liking, commenting on your posts, if she had given up, is what I'm trying to say. If she had given up,
Mm-hmm.
then I wouldn't have been able to benefit from the incredible transformation I got from her coaching. And I think we need to speak to that, right?
Yeah, I mean that's such a big one that that might even be its own episode, so to speak. But yeah, definitely to touch on that because that's a very common sticking point and a place where people quit. And I think that's the more realistic of the fear versus I'm going to get a lot of negative feedback because it's very unlikely if you really think about it that if I think of myself a couple years ago putting up some Facebook posts and saying like, "Hey, I've got this technique, whether it's emotional freedom tapping or here's a way you can be present with your emotions and process through some things if you're afraid to go on stage." I doubt people. What are you doing? This is the stupidest thing. Most people aren't going to do that, right? It's not controversial. I'm not talking politics. I'm not, you know, most people aren't going to attack you. That will show up as a fear, like, oh, I'm afraid people will. But usually, 9 out of 10 people I investigate that with, it's yeah, no one's going to care, no one's going to respond at all, and that probably is going to happen unless you already have a pretty big audience from something else.
It happens in my own community. Like,
Of course.
people pay to be there, right? And then I'm posting, and even like my coaches, and I'm like, hello, are you guys
Yeah,
paying attention? Like, oh yeah, I see your post. But they're not commenting or liking. I mean, there's no reason for it, but we give it meaning, and it has no meaning, but we're giving it meaning. It's probably because people are too busy, At least they're looking. They're paying attention, but they're not commenting and they're not engaging because they're too busy.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that is, there is a willpower. No, it's not just will. It's willpower, but it's an understanding beforehand, I think is really important to know that it's probably going to be a long game. And most people are not necessarily going to respond. And most people that now work with me, even on a pretty consistent basis, I never saw comments from them. Like it's not, they don't owe, and no one owes you that. And it's not representative of who's actually going to work with you necessarily. And usually, one simple way to look at it is how often do you do that? There's probably think about people you regularly watch on YouTube. Most of you probably don't like watch every video and go, "That was awesome," and then go to their website and send them emails and go, "I love your work." You just watch their video, and you have this relationship with them, but they don't know that you've been watching them for 5 years. They don't know that you've been saving up to work with them, and so but when it's your own work that you're putting out there, all of that goes out the window. And we're immediately in this alternate reality where we're sort of expecting or hoping for a reaction that we ourselves don't give to almost anyone. Like, and so that's part of the emotional work of
It makes us feel very vulnerable when we put ourselves
absolutely.
out there and we're sharing our work and our thoughts, and then we don't get a response. It's that vulnerability really at peace, I think it is.
And you know, I have a I obviously, you know, my it's not like I have this huge YouTube channel, but there's a couple videos that are more process oriented. And another thing to keep in mind, if you're putting things on YouTube like meditations or EFT tapping rounds or like here's a guided inner child type process, that's not what the majority of people are putting on YouTube for, right? Most people aren't opening the YouTube. I'm like, I want to sit down and do some like deep work on myself. So you have to remember that, right? You're not putting a background thing talking about this is what's in the news today. You're not going to compete with that for the most part. So you have to, it's best to keep that in the back of your mind. Wait, what is the actual purpose of this work I'm putting out there? I have to regularly, and I have this written down, by the way. Like I have things I have to reread sometimes and re-refer to. It's like, wait, remember what this video is for. This video probably is for like 20 people within my sphere, given like the number of subscribers and how sort of specific it is. But I've also had videos that have like 30 views that have led to someone reaching out and like we still work together. And so you have to keep in mind, and this all goes back to clarity, which has come up many times in our conversations. Why am I making this video? And some part of you is going to want lots of likes and shares and comments, and that's healthy. It's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with you wanting to have a bigger response. Am I happy when a video gets more response? I remember the only video that ever like YouTube just kept pumping out for some reason. It got like 2,000 views in a day. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And then the next one didn't do it. Like, but so that's fun. It's great. But if that becomes a high you're chasing, or you lose touch of like, wait, I am putting this out there because, and if the only answer you have is like, because I hope people will like it and respond to it, that's a very fragile game that you're playing. You're setting yourself up to be sad and disappointed on a near daily basis versus this comes back to, I think, being a jazz musician where, yeah, you're playing for 10 people half the time. Even I've gone to gigs with people I consider jazz famous and there's like 10 people there because it's a smaller world. But they're not doing it to be, they're doing it for me in the audience. They're doing it for the 10 people that are there. And yes, they deserve more. They're happy when they get a more visible gig, but you want that inner connection as to, I have a reason I'm putting this video out. I have a reason I'm putting this post out, and it might only speak, if it's really deep and really specific, yeah, there might only be 4 people that read it, but you better believe like one of those 4 people might start following you for a year silently.
Right. Right. Yeah. 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 So, I mean, let's say, like, what would be, since we're talking about fear of visibility, what would be like the one thing you would want someone to take away from this video?
That 90%, I'm going to assume the person watching this video is the people that talk to us that say, I've already done some work on that. So I would say the work you did on that is good. Keep doing whatever, like tapping, meditating on the fears that come up around visibility. That's fine. That's not in and of itself enough to give you the framework you need to be able to just put yourself out there, so to speak. If you're already doing that, then you're probably not even watching this video. But you usually need a certain level of clarity, which is like, what am I putting out there and why? Because there has to be that sort of, doesn't have to be, but that connection helps give you, there's a reason I want to express this to the world. And that is going to give more of that bump, more of that push that you need to actually do it. And then there has to be a certain level of clarity about, I know how to put myself out there in that way. And this sounds really simple and basic, but it's actually quite huge because remember we talked about before this thing where you have an hour to sit down and like I didn't do it. A lot of times it's because it's not, you don't actually know and have a clear framework. Okay, for me to write this blog means I know exact, I go to WordPress, I type it in here, or I have my voice to text, I speak into that, I put that up as a blog. Like you have to actually know what to do, and that takes some time. Like I have this camera set up, I have this microphone, this is the same background as my YouTube videos. Like that wasn't here when I started renting this place, right? You have to now, but now that it's here, if I say, okay, I want to make a video today, my brain knows exactly what that means. We go into this room, we turn it on, we open this program, I talk into this mic, and your brain understands what that task is.
Yeah.
If your task is, today I'm going to try to put myself out there, your brain has absolutely nothing to work with. So often those things aren't in place. Once they are, now you can, if you say, okay, I have the mic, I have the camera, I know exactly what to do. I go to record and my voice, that's now really specific. You can now take that to a practitioner or meditate on that yourself and say, okay, what's going on with my throat every time I sit down to make a video? And you're going to get specific things, you're going to get specific memories, you're going to get specific emotions. But fear of visibility is very general, very vague. Tapping on that alone will not create all the other things that just create an infrastructure for you to have yourself out there.
Yeah, this whole idea of it's like decision fatigue is what that is if you don't have a plan, a strategy, a process in place. Even if it's something as simple as I am going to go onto Facebook and I'm going to put a picture up and type in a quote or something.
Yes.
I mean, you've already made that decision ahead of time. That's your strategy. I'm going to do this every day for a certain number of days. And that way you don't have to think, like you said, like, okay, I'm going to put myself out there. How am I going to do it? Where should I do it? What should I do with it? You have to have your decisions made ahead of time. Otherwise, you will become exhausted and it's not sustainable. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Like
Yeah,
having
I think that's a better way to say it. Like, okay, what's the one thing? It is to have a clarity, a decision about, okay, this is something I'm actually comfortable doing. Because if you're not yet, there's no point in, you will just freeze up. So maybe you are comfortable sharing other people's quotes, which that is putting, even that is sort of announcing like, hey, I'm into this stuff. It's telling the world I'm interested in like this Wayne Dyer quote, which for some people is sort of like stepping out and say, yeah, I didn't know you were into that, whatever. Right? That might be the level you're comfortable putting material out there, but feel into, okay, this is something I actually could do emotionally. I'm comfortable with it. Maybe it's a little uncomfortable, but I'm not just expecting I'm just going to go YouTube live, right, on day one. I'm comfortable with this, and I know exactly the steps to do that. Because then when you start doing it, the specific fears and triggers will be way more apparent.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Yeah. Thanks, Evan. And I think next time we definitely will go deeper into like why coaches quit, like
Mhm.
where they get stuck and like why they quit. I think that would be a really good thing to continue to dive a little deeper into.
Yep, yep. It's that lack of feedback once you do this part we're talking about, once you start putting the stuff out there.
All right.
Great.
Thanks again, Evan. So
Thanks so
nice to
much.
have you.
Always my pleasure.